Welcome back to another week of Real True Facts, the Real True Podcast. My name is Nancy O'Dell.
And I am Chris Lemon. Not that one.
Not that Chris Lemon.
You were thinking it, but it's not that one.
It's not. Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale on today's episode as we set sail through the Bermuda Triangle.
Or possibly set whatever airplanes have.
Wings.
Yeah, set flight over the Bermuda Triangle.
Take flight.
Right, because we know there have been instances, both air and sea, of disappearances and strange phenomena. And we like to discuss these sort of unexplained phenomena that happen here on Real True Facts. And this is an age-old question.
Yeah, I think the triangle doesn't get discussed enough. I think it's something that we are all familiar with. I don't know if it's me, but it almost seems like it's old school. Like it doesn't fit. School. Yeah, like it might not fit in today's digital world. It doesn't. It's ancient. It's a very old thing. I mean, if you think about it, because it's in the sea and it's in the air. I mean, and those are things that you can't have those without the planet. So I would, guess that it's been around since the dawn of time, like a lot of these things that we talk about. But yeah, it's something that I'm really excited to talk about today, just because I don't really know much about it. I know we have an expert coming on to talk about it later, but I do have a connection to the Bermuda Triangle. My cousin has actually been there. He used to work on cruise ships, and they used to sail through the triangle. And I'd always ask him about it, and he would just say like, oh, it was fine. Like, I don't think, he goes, yeah, some people were kind of nervous to go through, but it was okay. And it just seemed like he was really brushing me off, which makes me think that something may have happened.
Perhaps a little too comfortable with it.
Too comfortable. You think you would be more excited, be like, oh my God, like we went through and we came back. Like, I couldn't believe. He was just like, no, it's cool. Like, we were just, going to Bermuda, like no big deal. It's like, it's not a big deal, in my opinion.
Or maybe he or she can't say more out of fear.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we address here on Real True Facts is we bring the fearless onto our shows so they can expose the truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's going to be huge today. But I'm very excited to get into it. Sometimes it's known as the Devil's Triangle, so that gives you any kind of indication of how serious this really is. And I know that in pop culture, we talk a lot about pop culture and what they got right. It's been attributed to a lot of different disappearances, to the paranormal or extraterrestrial. So there might be something out of this world to attribute to those things. I think about different movies that it's been about, and there was one theory that Amelia Earhart's disappearance was linked to the Bermuda Triangle because she was flying over that region, and they never found her wreckage. And they think maybe that had something to do with it.
Now, there is an older movie, I think it's actually called The Bermuda Triangle, and with John Huston, and the angle there was this odd kind of supernatural. It seemed like there was a doll involved.
If there's a doll, then
right, and even some cursed paintings on the ship, and just a lot of weird stuff. But the one thing that stuck out, the movie was probably, I would say, below average. But at the very end, in the credits, they have this ticker showing all the occurrences, all the missing ships, missing crews that have been affected by the Bermuda Triangle. And that's the one thing that really stuck out as poignant throughout this whole debacle of a film.
Mm-hmm. The list is quite long. For it to be a specific region, it is, for our listeners that don't know, it's in Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, and then goes back to Florida. So that's the three areas that they're considering in this triangle. And there's a whole lot of nothing in the triangle. There's some islands that go through. Obviously, Bermuda is an island. So, it's a big region, and it's routinely flown over, sailed through. But there's a lot of these instances where planes and ships just don't come back. And so it's really quite a mystery as to why that happens so frequently and people keep traveling through it.
Sure. Yeah. As to why it happens sometimes and not other times. Yes, that's quite curious. So I don't know if you're ready, but I'd like to take a quick break and get right back into it.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll take a quick break, and we come back. We will talk to our expert about the Bermuda Triangle. Our guest today is Joe Duke. He is a U.S. government contractor and expert on the Bermuda Triangle. Please give us a warm Real True Facts welcome to Joe Duke.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming on, Joe Duke. As we mentioned in the intro, we like to have people who are fearless on the show, and you seem to have unprecedented access to so many government agency files, and in this particular case, the Bermuda Triangle. So it only made sense to finally bring you on.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. There's a lot of information, a lot of sort of obscure esoteric corners in the government filing cabinet, so to speak, and this would definitely fall right in there. So these are things that the government doesn't like to talk about, but they also have bigger concerns than worrying if someone's going to discuss the past researches and experiments into the Bermuda Triangle.
Sure. So first of all, can you tell us what the Bermuda Triangle is? Is it paranormal? Is it alien? Is it what kind of phenomena are we dealing with?
Well, the closest thing that we've been able to compare it to is probably something a weird geographic anomaly. It's a combination of based on its location of climate changes and magnetic, I don't know what the proper word for it. It's not really my bailiwick, but magnetic dissonance, which has caused a fair number of compasses, meters, regulators, what have you, in different planes, ships over the years to go haywire, and chaos results from there. When you're flying or sailing blind, anything can happen.
Yeah, in my preliminary research of this area, I was looking up the 1962 issue of American Legion magazine, and the author wrote that in one incident, the flight leader had said, and quoting, "We are entering white water. Nothing seems right. We don't know where we are." And it was also stated that the planes flew off to Mars. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not, but the idea of going through this area and hitting that water, and you have these seasoned sailors and pilots, and to have them say, like, nothing seems right. It's like not one thing seems right. Is very disconcerting to me. Is this an area that we have to be really worried about potentially spreading, or is this sort of like an isolated area?
So far, we've only noticed it as being an isolated area, and so much so that going back quite a number of decades, not obviously this is not well known. This may be the first time it's ever been revealed. But there is an area, or a section, I guess, within, not to be repetitive, but a section within Area 51 where we have tried to, as best as we can, simulate the Bermuda Triangle in order to make various tests and experiments over the years to determine what exactly is causing these problems. And so that's not very well known. A lot of people think Area 51 is only about aliens, but a number of unexplained phenomena have been studied there for the last several decades, going back into the early 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So there is a synthetic Bermuda Triangle, or a man-made Bermuda Triangle within the walls of government. What sort of interesting facts and results from these experiments have you seen in your travels?
Well, one thing I can tell you is that in the day of organized crime, that the government actually received requests from a number of heads of families in order to see if they could perhaps dispose of their enemies in the actual Bermuda Triangle. And they made several requests, offers of payments to the government to use or learn from the facility at Area 51 on whether or not this could be a tidy means of disposal of their rivals.
Okay, so disposal area, because I know in the past the government has had ties with organized crime that they don't that they like to kind of hide under the rug. So that kind of adds up.
Well, it's like how people say they can get away with anything in international waters. I mean, what if we're dealing with supernatural waters? That you really could, I guess, dispose of anything, any kind of material, and seemingly get away with it.
Yeah, you're exactly on the right track there, and that's what the thinking was for the, as I said, for the gangs. Then that was one use that was proposed at one point for the Bermuda Triangle. If we're going to have this phenomenon, why not try to make it work to our advantage?
So, do we know where this triangle goes? Are we dealing with a Stargate kind of situation? I'm a little reluctant to use pop culture because we don't know for sure, what they're getting right and what they're getting wrong. But, if it is a doorway and it's open on one side, where does the door go to?
Well, it's believed to have, or I should say, it's been referred to a number of ways over the years: Stargate, dead zone, wormhole, you name it. It's been thrown out there before, and that's a great question as to where these things go once they're lost. Now, I heard you guys talking in the opening about some people have made it through successfully. That's certainly true. The other really odd phenomena or fact of the matter is that, the things that have gone missing, let's say, for instance, in 1918, a large destroyer ship went missing towards the end of World War I. None of that wreckage has ever been found. So if the ship disappeared in that area, there should be wreckage, right? But there's nothing there, and it's never been found.
Oh, so, okay, that's interesting. So that lends the question, maybe not where does it lead, but when does it lead?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you could be talking about not only a space continuum, but a time continuum. Yes, exactly.
Some people come back, some don't. And so it seems like it's random, or maybe there's some kind of algorithm we are able to trick. Because, I don't know if you were here for the beginning. I told the story about my cousin, but, he has been through the Bermuda Triangle, I think a couple times, and he seemed very unfazed by it. And it seems like something that it would feel extraordinary to make it out of and tell the story. So have you seen instances, because I don't know if you have worked with survivors or not, but have you seen instances where there is amnesia of some kind, or, is it any, I'm so reluctant to say conspiracy, but, are people being paid off to not speak of their experiences?
There have been 2 recorded cases in the, at least on the government's files that I've seen. Both were merchant Marines who went out on maneuvers away from the larger ship. When they returned, the ship was no longer there. They were both on the same ship, I should add. When these two merchant marines returned, there was no ship there. They made it to the nearest village and reported back into their superiors. They were brought into Area 51 to the test site. They were interviewed thoroughly. And then, yes, they were given certain drugs and put through certain education programs in order to not repeat what it is they had experienced.
I knew it. It's kind of dangerous and sad that it happens, but it's oddly refreshing to hear it in such a matter-of-fact way, because we're always, we have this feeling, we know it happens, but it's just a little bit refreshing and almost, makes me feel better to hear the truth come out from someone who knows the facts. In this case, we're always worried about if people are being drugged or whatever, and we think it's happening, but now we have the real true facts.
Well, you can imagine the egg on the face of the U.S. government when you lose a destroyer ship, not for the first time in that area, and it's not really something you want getting out. So
why do people keep traveling through it if these disappearances have happened, and especially with government vehicles? Vessels, they're mad about these disappearances, but they keep going through. What is the purpose?
One of the things is cost and efficiency, and combined with a lack of belief in any type of phenomenon existing in that area. And by that, I mean that there's enough skepticism on the part of those making the calls. Therefore, they do not want to assume the excess risk of taking an alternate route, whether it be by air or by water. And so it's mostly stubbornness and a lack of belief of the evidence that exists to the contrary, that they continue to pursue these routes, pursue these lanes through the area that we call the Bermuda Triangle.
And I could almost see it as possibly an admission, of guilt or of existence. If they started rerouting, then that would give some credence to all of the stories and all of the, possible mistakes made in the past. But if they just forge ahead as if, nothing were going on, that seems like the government's kind of a modus operandi in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, you're correct there. You would also theoretically be exposing a weakness to any rival governments who saw that you would not patrol those waters or use those skyways. That would not be a signal that we want to send to our enemies.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost like a very large game of chicken. It's like, oh, look what we can do. We can go through this, and we're not afraid. It's like you don't want to show that weakness. It's like, we'll go through it. Consequences be damned. This is just what we're going to do.
Well, it's a twofold effect. Either we're going to be successful, or hopefully we're going to get more evidence to teach us what's happening in this area that we can then take back to our simulation zone at Area 51. So either way, unofficially, it's considered a win-win.
You're gathering data regardless.
That's right.
Oh, okay. So when we come back from a quick break, I'd like to possibly get into some of the more interesting cases that you've encountered with, in your discoveries with the government and their files, if that's all right. So why don't we take a quick break and we'll be right back. This week, we are discussing the Bermuda Triangle with Joe Duke, one of our contacts that has access to unseen government files. And we're just fortunate enough to have him with us and, share his stories and his knowledge. Thanks again for being with us, Joe.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Nancy, too, for having me on the show this week.
So I believe we mentioned in the intro Amelia Earhart, and I was asking if you might be able to share some of the more interesting tales with us. But do you have any knowledge of the Amelia Earhart incident and what may have actually taken place there?
Yeah, so the Amelia Earhart incident, of course, is obviously before all of our times involved in this podcast. But what had happened before the flight was that Amelia, worried about what may come, being a cautious person, reportedly took out an insurance policy with Lloyd's of London. Now, it's well known that Lloyd's of London does not regard the Bermuda Triangle as any type of hazardous place. In fact, they look at it as a joke. So Amelia Earhart, in making her flight, she navigated the area successfully, and but before she landed, she did crash on one of the smaller islands outside of Puerto Rico. Because she would not be insured for the loss, and also because of the hit to her reputation, she decided that it was best to just stay where she was and make a life there. And that's what happened to Amelia Earhart. It's not a very, I suppose, sexy story involving aliens or time travel, but that's what happened to Amelia.
I mean, I think that this puts a lot of anxiety to rest because she has many fans. Even the stories about her, I think, are even larger than who she was as an aviator. People to this day admire her for her bravery, and it's such a peaceful ending to the story, just knowing that she lived a life on an island, and thought it would be better to do that rather than come back.
Right. She was urged to return to the United States, where she would receive a hero's welcome, because she had accomplished many things at that point. But Amelia felt, according to the reports, the records, that that was not the way she wanted to be seen or remembered, should that be her last flight. And so, as you say, she decided to live out her days where she was.
Wow. I sure hope Lloyd's of London, do you know if they paid out? I mean, is this kind of a case of insurance fraud?
No, we don't know about that. To this day, there are at least two entities officially that do not recognize the Bermuda Triangle as a hazardous place. One is Lloyd's of London, as I mentioned, and the second one is the U.S. Coast Guard. Therefore, if you report an emergency from that area, you may not have the best of luck getting the Coast Guard to come out.
Yeah, I would imagine it's very high risk for someone to come retrieve you from that area.
That's right. Yeah. It's also, you can imagine, in terms of the both entities, although we know the contrary to be the case, both view a lot of these reports, cases, filings, whatever you want to call them, as pranks or, another conspiracy theorist looking to make some news. And so it's they just wash their hands of it, essentially.
Interesting. So I actually want to take a step back to one of your earlier statements about the magnetic field that causes instruments to go haywire, and this is something that seems to come up a lot on Real True Facts. Are energy fields and just energy in general. Whether it's through reports or your experimentations or even word of mouth. Have you uncovered any possible causes of this energy field?
To our best guess, and in our simulations that we've run in Area 51, the best guess that we have is its location between the two poles, and that possibly some early tectonic shifting of plates has created a perfect storm, if you will, of magnetic fields. the evidence, or I should say, the experiments continue to go on. We've been working off of this theory for some time now, but have not produced anything concrete that I could, share with you at this point. But that's our best guess. It's location between the two poles and possibly its proximity to some centuries ago tectonic plate shifting.
Now, have you witnessed the effects of these magnetic fields on the human body? Obviously, things disappear in there, but for the subjects who have returned, do they report any sort of physical ailments or changes to their mental state? Have you observed anything like that?
We have actually. We've noticed in the cases that we've been able to interview after being successfully retrieved from the area, physically, nothing adverse in terms of sickness, weight loss, weight gain, any type of disease. What has been a common thread among these people has been sort of not a hallucination, but rather this sort of out-of-body experience, if you will, where they almost feel as though they are seeing another life that they lived as if in a dream that's not their own. And, they've all reported of these sort of scenarios where it's very vivid that people that were dear to them that may have passed on are still alive. They're in a different profession, they live in a different city or country, things like that. I guess to put it more plainly, we might refer to it as a parallel universe, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Now, those mental effects, were those in the natural Bermuda Triangle, or were you able to cause those as well in the government site?
So what I'm detailing to you right now is what they reported to us from their time in the Bermuda Triangle.
Okay, so the real one then, the natural one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right. We have worked to recreate the environment, though, in order to determine what may have caused this in them in the first place. Perhaps also jog some memory of their actual experience, how they got into that situation, what happened to the vessel or plane that they were in that area. We've had no luck so far, but the work continues.
Let's talk for a minute about the synthetic portal that you have at Area 51. Obviously, you have been able to send things through this area, but has anything just mysteriously come through on its own?
No, it's not that kind of. I wouldn't say it's a portal where things can come and go through. It's more of a simulation of the environment of the Bermuda Triangle. So we're trying to recreate the conditions. As I said, it's not as if we've got a boat in there and the boat goes missing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really studying, hoping to one day get to the determination of what's happening to these people and these vessels in that area. But so far, no, nothing has disappeared or appeared in that environment.
Okay.
Interesting. So this seems to be one of my common concerns whenever a government is involved, which is just about all the time. Are you aware of any discussions or plans to weaponize this phenomenon, whether it's the Bermuda Triangle itself or if the effects are able to be replicated?
Absolutely. That is another component of this research, is to not only be able to control the area, but to also possibly recreate the area in a given geographical space. This would save us manpower, equipment, and weapons.
And are we simulating parallel universes, or are people do you think people are actually glimpsing their lives in a parallel universe? You know, I'm imagining that if we're able to recreate those effects in a laboratory setting, that might be used for some kind of psychological warfare. You know, I would hope it would be used to maybe help people heal from experiences, or, you know, maybe a total recall kind of scenario where you can live out another kind of life. But, you know, are people using this for psychological warfare?
Absolutely, we are. The only when you mention recall to help people, the only aspect of that we're interested in is should one of our people go missing there or return from there or have information that we think could be helpful. That is where we would use the recall aspect, which again we're working through in different tests and experiments. But the ultimate aim is to not only determine what's causing this phenomenon, but to be able to harness it and, of course, use it as a weapon to defend this country.
Yeah, I guess I'd be naive to think otherwise, you know, that we weren't using it in some sort of militaristic fashion because, you know, if we don't, someone else will, right? And that's kind of the common line that and thought process that comes with the U.S. government. And you certainly seem like a man who's seen a lot and, you know, is kind of practical, doesn't believe in a lot of voodoo and mumbo jumbo, it seems like.
Frankly, sometimes the best place to be in a hurricane is right in the eye of the storm. And, you know, that's where I like to position myself knowing what I know. You know, I've sort of grown numb to it, I suppose. But yes, it's a cutthroat world, and like you said, if we don't do it, somebody else will. You've heard that rationale used with the announcement of the Space Force, and you know, to me, this is no different than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Triangle Force, perhaps, but yeah, I guess I'm kind of a doomsayer in that way, where it's like I hear about things happening in labs, and even when we talk to Dr. Seymour about the experiments that he and his colleagues are doing, in my mind, I automatically think like, oh, how can this be used for evil? How can this be used in defense of the country? Or like, you know, what's this going to do if it falls into the right hands or the wrong hands as well?
Well, that kind of attitude would get you a government contractor position pretty easily.
Yeah. We have a tendency here on Real True Facts to kind of be, you know, lean towards positive energy and peace vibes, but that doesn't always defend the country or get the job done. So that's understandable in certain cases. Now I have to transition to one of my favorite questions that I ask, I think every episode.
Yeah.
Of
whether tradition at this point.
Yeah, whether it's Beast or whatever it might be. But if someone were to find themselves, you know, in the Bermuda Triangle or being affected by the Bermuda Triangle, what sort of advice would you give them? You know, this is akin to, you know, if you experience a bear attack, you should, you know, make yourself large or roll on the ground or whatever. You could see this as a kind of self-defense in the Bermuda Triangle. Is there any advice you could give to someone?
Well, I think the thing to understand is that the best practice that I would advise, again, based on the reports that we have over the last several decades into the early 20th, late 19th century, you know, the common thread amongst these things is that the instruments failed, right? So I would go back to an almost I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but maybe pioneer spirit, where you don't rely on your instrument so much as your own two eyes. Notice the position of the sun, what time of year you're traveling, your relation to the horizon. Rely on those old measures, and you know, hopefully you'll make it through all right.
Just good old basic survival skills.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Sometimes we get so reliant upon all of our technical marvels that we forget that we have, our eyes and ears and all these other instruments at our human disposal. And so that's interesting advice if you find yourself, affected by the Bermuda Triangle.
My other piece of advice would be stay the hell out of the Bermuda Triangle.
Hey, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Joe Duke, everybody, government contractor. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's been fun with us and Nancy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So when we come back from a quick break, we will open up our Real True Facts mailbag. Welcome back to Real True Facts. Let's open up our mailbag today. We have one question just from someone who's going by the name Mike. No location, just from Mike.
Okay.
And Mike says, I like it when you talk about aliens. Great episodes. When are you going to talk about hybrids?
Wow. So first of all, thanks for the question. Thanks for listening. I like the alien episodes as well.
Yeah.
When are you going to talk about hybrids? I think he's referring to, now I've heard about this, where, we're all familiar with abductions, right? Where a human is abducted, but sometimes they come back and they're pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what he means by, I wasn't sure what he meant by hybrids, but we're talking about like alien babies.
Yeah, or alien human hybrid, I think. And I again, maybe there are different kinds because, maybe it's just an alien fetus being incubated in a human, or maybe it's actually a human alien hybrid.
Yeah.
I've heard about that, and I've heard that maybe this ties into aliens. Was that in ancient Egypt?
Ancient Egypt. Our agent talked about that too, about them being among us.
Right. So there were also stories of, gene splicing or creating a hybrid way back then. Mm-hmm. And so the lineage is totally different today. I think this topic's pretty ripe for exploration.
Yeah, there's a lot of places we could go with it. I mean, we brought up ancient Egypt. I remember Dr. Lauren to talk about how they excavated a body that had the head of a cat. I think it was the head of a cat that they had on there. So we've seen hybrids, I would imagine, throughout history. If something had a cat head and a human body, that would be a hybrid. So, I think we've got plenty of areas we can go. I think maybe we should dedicate a show to this.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. We can take a look at alien hybrids. Alien
hybrids. So, Mike, you got your answer. When are you going to talk about alien hybrids? Next week. We will talk about alien hybrids next week. So I'd like to take this opportunity and thank Joe Duke, our guest today, U.S. government contractor, expert on the Bermuda Triangle, and I would imagine many other things. So we should definitely have him back to discuss his illustrious career.
Yeah, it seems like he has access, or either does or did have access to a lot of files and sites and government locations. And to us, that's fascinating. And it's just so interesting. To him, it's kind of, it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
NBD, Area 51, that's where we conducted this and that and certain other things. And we're just, whoa, wait a minute. And he's like, that's the life I've lived since, for years.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. He's a wellspring of knowledge. And even, if Area 51, he's just punching a clock, I guess. So, we'll have to have him back to talk to all of us and all of our listeners out there. Speaking of which, if you would like to become a listener out there with us, we are on so many different platforms.
Yes, we're even on YouTube. So if you a lot of people like to use YouTube, so you can listen there, and then all of the normal podcast outlets, whether it's Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify. It's we should be on just about every platform. Or if you just head to our website, it'll take you right to Podbean to listen. And if there happens to be a platform that you prefer for podcasts and we're not on it, let me know. I take that as a personal challenge.
Yeah, we find them. If you would like to email us, you can do so at mail@realtruefactspodcast.com, and then our website is realtruefactspodcast.com. You can listen to us there. That takes us to Podbean. Leave a review. Leave a review on Apple, any platform you like. We certainly appreciate the feedback. It helps us do our job easier and get those real true facts out there to you, the listener. We certainly appreciate it. We really can't do without you. So tell your friends, tell your family members. If you like the show, pass it along. So we'll be able to get more great content out to you.
Yeah, one thing I think would be fun to do down the line, if enough listeners ask for it, would be something like bonus content through a Patreon or something like that. Mm-hmm. We're not getting too many requests at the moment, but I just wanted to throw it out there in case there's anyone who said, you know what, I'd love some exclusive content, and Patreon's a way to do it. Something like that. We're always curious and open to new ways to deliver the goods.
Yeah, and if you would like any additional content on the show, any additional content about our guests, topics, past topics, questions that we might pose that everyone can answer, you can check that out on our Instagram at realtruefactsgram. So you can find all sorts of different info there. And just keep tuning in. So I think that'll be it for us today.
I think so too.
I think so too. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. We will see you next week on Real True Facts. And dear listeners, remember, keep questioning your world, because just because you hear about it or read about it doesn't mean it's true. We'll see you next time.
Podmoth.